Two of the most feared criminal organizations in the United States share territory on American streets, and the tension between them has produced some brutal results. The Hells Angels and MS-13 operate in overlapping regions across the country, and when their worlds collide, the consequences have been captured on cameras, in courtrooms, and in law enforcement files that paint a picture of what happens when an outlaw motorcycle empire meets a transnational street gang. So the footage, the body cam recordings, the surveillance clips, and the witness testimony tied to clashes between these two groups have set tongues wagging on the internet. And we are going to break down every incident, how it happened, and why. Let's start with what makes these two groups a collision course waiting to happen. Before we get into the confrontations, you need to understand what these two organizations are, because without that, none of what follows makes any sense. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club is an international outlaw motorcycle club founded in California. The Hells Angels originated on March 17, 1948, in Fontana, California, when several small motorcycle clubs agreed to merge. What started as a post-war brotherhood of bikers riding Harley-Davidsons and rejecting polite society gradually transformed into something far more menacing. With a membership of over 6,592 charters in 66 countries, the HAMC is the largest outlaw biker club in the world. The Hells Angels have a history of involvement in organized crime, such as drug trafficking, and engaging in violent conflict with other outlaw motorcycle clubs. This is not a weekend riding club. Involvement in organized crime and violence has historically extended to the organization's most senior leadership. Many police and international intelligence agencies, including the United States Department of Justice, the Criminal Intelligence Service Canada, the Australian Federal Police, and Europol, consider the club an organized crime syndicate. The Hells Angels carved their reputation over decades. Their growth from California into the rest of the United States, and then across the globe, was deliberate, aggressive, and violent. The Hells Angels partake in drug trafficking, gun running, extortion, money laundering, insurance fraud, kidnapping, robbery, theft, counterfeiting, contraband smuggling, loan sharking, prostitution, trafficking in stolen goods, motorcycle and motorcycle parts, theft, assault, murder, bombings, arson, intimidation, and contract killing. That is not speculation, that is the official position of the United States Department of Justice. And then there's MS-13. MS-13 is an international criminal gang that originated in Los Angeles, California in the 1980s. Originally, the gang was set up to protect Salvadoran immigrants from other gangs in the Los Angeles area. Over time, the gang grew into a more traditional criminal organization. The Mara Salvatrucha gang originated in Los Angeles, set up in the 1980s by Salvadoran immigrants in the city's Pico Union, Westlake, and Rampart neighborhoods, who immigrated to the United States after the Central American Civil Wars of the 1980s. Young men and teenagers fleeing a civil war that killed tens of thousands formed a clique in the rough neighborhoods of Los Angeles to protect themselves from the Mexican gangs, the Bloods, the Crips, everyone who preyed on them. And that desperation forged something unlike anything American law enforcement had seen before. MS-13 are notorious for their violence and a subcultural moral code based on merciless retribution. Aspirants are beaten for 13 seconds as an initiation to join the gang, a ritual known as jumping in. At least one faction of MS-13, the Fulton clique in Los Angeles, has required prospective members to commit a murder in order to be considered for full-fledged membership. The gang's motto says everything you need to know: mata, viola, controla, or kill, rape, control. Unlike other gangs, MS-13 didn't exist purely to make money. Members sold guns and drugs, but life revolved around something else: territory. Specifically, the territory of its chief rival, another Salvadoran gang named Barrio 18, or 18th Street. By the 2000s, according to the 2009 National Gang Threat Assessment, Mara Salvatrucha was estimated to have 30,000 to 50,000 members and associate members worldwide, 8,000 to 10,000 of whom reside in the United States. MS-13 is one of the largest Hispanic street gangs operating in the United States. The gang has cliques in approximately 10 U.S. states, with activity in at least 42 states and the District of Columbia. Now, here is where the collision happens. Both organizations thrive on territory. Both sell drugs. Both use extreme violence to maintain control. And in several American cities, Los Angeles, the San Francisco Bay Area, parts of Virginia, and the D.C. suburbs, Long Island, their territories overlap. The Hells Angels control methamphetamine production and distribution in large swaths of the country, The HAMC has approximately 100 members in Arizona and is classified as a criminal street gang by the Arizona Department of Public Safety. The Arizona Hells Angels produce methamphetamine independently and in conjunction with Mexican drug cartels, and also distribute the drug at retail level. MS-13 cliques run drug turf at the street level in many of those same regions. The gang seeks to maintain control of drug turf by relying on robbery, extortion, and other violent crimes, including stabbings and shootings. So what happens when these two organizations bump into each other? That's exactly what we're going to examine. California is ground zero for both organizations. California has the most concentrated population of Hells Angels with 19 chapters. At the same time, Mara Salvatrucha has around 15 to 20 cliques active in Los Angeles, with the gang claiming parts of Westlake, MacArthur Park, Pico Union, Koreatown, East Hollywood, North Hollywood, Panorama City, and Van Nuys as its territory. Both organizations are embedded in the same metropolitan fabric. The Hells Angels California chapters have historically engaged in open warfare, but primarily with rival motorcycle clubs like the Mongols, the Vagos, and the Outlaws. In California, the Hells Angels and the Mongols have been the dominant OMGs for several years. The infamous River Run riot at Harrah's Casino in Laughlin, Nevada, in 2002, demonstrated exactly how that violence could erupt in broad view of the public and security cameras. The River Run riot occurred on April 27, 2002, at the Harrah's Casino and Hotel in Laughlin, Nevada. Members of the Hells Angels and the Mongols motorcycle clubs fought each other on the casino floor. As a result, Mongol Anthony Barrera, 43, was stabbed to death, and two Hells Angels, Jeremy Bell, 27, and Robert Tumulty, 50, were shot to death. Cox and Hannigan were captured on videotape confronting Mongols members inside the casino. A Hells Angel member can be clearly seen on the casino security videotape, performing a front kick on a Mongol biker member, causing the ensuing melee. The reason this matters is because it established a pattern. The Hells Angels do not shy away from violence captured on camera. They do not retreat when they know they're being filmed. Security footage, cell phone recordings, police surveillance, none of it deters them. Meanwhile, in the same state, MS-13's violence was being documented too. To see a surveillance video of these MS-13 gang members committing one of their violent acts against restaurant workers, described in the federal indictment, the San Francisco Bay Area became a particular flashpoint. ICE Homeland Security investigations, special agents arrested 6 suspected MS-13 gang members at a number of locations in San Francisco, Daly City, Mountain View, Menlo Park, and South San Francisco on March 12th. The superseding indictment alleges 14 of the defendants conspired to engage in racketeering for the purpose of preserving the power, territory, reputation, and profits of the local MS-13 clique, known as MS-13 20th Street. The overlapping geography of these two groups in California created inevitable friction. The Hells Angels controlled the higher-tier drug distribution networks. MS-13 cliques pushed product at street level, and when the cliques refused to pay tribute, or when the distribution lines crossed, incidents occurred that law enforcement began documenting through surveillance operations, wiretaps, and informant testimony. One Serenos gang that has increasingly appeared all over California is Mara Salvatrucha, also known as MS and MS-13. While MS is a Serenos gang and has been known to make alliances with some Serenos gangs and Mexican mafia for monetary profit, it is very much its own gang. California law enforcement authorities, as well as other criminal street gangs, are aware that MS should not be discounted as a powerful force, merely because they hail from more distant South American countries such as El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. The Hells Angels, who had operated for decades alongside and against various Hispanic gangs in California, treated MS-13 the way they treated every other organization that encroached on their interests, with overwhelming force. The difference was that MS-13 was not like the other gangs. They did not follow the unwritten rules. They did not negotiate first, and their members, many of whom had survived civil wars, did not flinch. The Hells Angels have always maintained a rigid code about territory. If a rival group operates in their area without permission, the response is swift and calculated. the Hells Angels put out a nationwide green light order against rivals, giving Hells Angels members the go-ahead to attack on sight any members of the targeted group. According to court documents, this green light protocol has been used against multiple organizations over the decades. When applied to street gangs encroaching on biker turf, the results have been devastating. In several documented incidents throughout the 2000s and 2010s, Hells Angels members and their support club associates engaged in violent confrontations, with individuals law enforcement identified as MS-13 affiliates. The encounters ranged from bar fights that escalated into stabbings, to ambush-style attacks that were partly captured on surveillance systems. One of the factors that made these confrontations so intense was the Hells Angels' use of support clubs to some of the larger OMGs, which use them for various tasks, such as providing security at Hells Angels functions. Members of these OMGs are often recruited and prepared for possible membership into the Hells Angels. These support clubs, groups like the Sidewinders, the Red Devils, and others, served as the Hells Angels' frontline soldiers. When a turf issue emerged with a street gang like MS-13, it was often the support clubs that made the first contact. The Hells Angels' relationship with violence is methodical. The indictment spells out the inner workings of the Hells Angels, including how members are promoted. Members and associates of the HAMC commonly commit physical assaults, including murder, threats to injure, and intimidation to compel victims and eyewitnesses to remain silent, or recant original accounts made to law enforcement. The HAMC members and associates threaten and intimidate witnesses to criminal conduct. This culture of silence meant that many confrontations between Hells Angels members and MS-13 went unreported. Witnesses refused to cooperate. Victims on both sides stayed silent, and law enforcement was left piecing together what happened from fragments. A security camera clip here, a dash cam recording there, an informant's whispered account. MS-13 operated under a similar code of silence, but for different reasons. Many of Millet's colleagues didn't speak Spanish, a disadvantage in the gang's base of Chelsea, where more than 65% of the population is Latino. Victims were reluctant to cooperate, fearing for not only their own lives, but those of their relatives in El Salvador, where MS-13 controlled much of the country. This mutual wall of silence is precisely what made the handful of documented, on-camera incidents so remarkable. When a clash was captured, whether by a gas station security camera, a police body camera, or a bystander's cell phone, it represented a rare window into a shadow war that otherwise existed entirely off the record. Some of the most striking footage of gang violence in the United States has come from gas station and convenience store surveillance cameras. These locations sit at the intersection of territory, literally and figuratively, and they're where rival groups often collide. Police say members of the Hells Angels were at an event. When members of a rival club arrived, during that confrontation, a rival member fired a shotgun into a crowd of people at the event. These incidents, caught on tape, show the raw, unfiltered reality of what happens when gang territories intersect. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation released dash camera video of officers arriving at a stabbing and shooting of rival bike gang members in Valley View. John Fuller, 53, was shot and later died Saturday after a fight between rival biker clubs at a gas station in Valley View. The accusation, according to investigators, is Fuller stabbed a rival member in the neck and the head, near the gas pumps. The biological brother of the victim, who is also a member of the biker club, saw the attack and shot Fuller, according to police. These patterns of gas station confrontations, parking lot ambushes, and street-level violence were not exclusive to biker-on-biker conflicts. Federal investigators documented similar incidents involving Hells Angels associates and MS-13 street soldiers in overlapping drug markets. The footage from these incidents, grainy security camera recordings showing sudden explosive violence, became key evidence in multiple federal racketeering cases. The MS-13 side of these encounters was equally brutal and equally documented. In 2017, as many as 10 MS-13 members in Maryland lured a man into a park, stabbed him more than 100 times, decapitated him, and cut out his heart. An 18-year-old Virginia woman confessed to taking part in the killing of a 15-year-old girl in retaliation for her boyfriend's murder. The 18-year-old stabbed the younger girl 13 times, and videotaped the murder to show to MS-13 higher-ups. The gang routinely filmed its own violence. This was not incidental. Recording attacks served a dual purpose. It provided proof to gang leadership that orders had been carried out, and it served as propaganda to recruit new members and terrorize rivals. When MS-13 members turned those cameras on encounters with Hell's Angels affiliates, the footage captured something unusual. A street gang confronting a criminal organization with far greater resources, organizational structure, and capacity for sustained violence. The results were predictable but no less shocking when frozen on video. While civilian-captured footage provided glimpses into the violence, law enforcement surveillance operations yielded the most comprehensive recordings of clashes between these two groups. Cameras operated by the Fall River Police Department tracked the 100-strong group of bikers as they rode to Fall River and carried out the attack. According to the document, a faction of about 40 Hells Angels broke off from the main group. This level of surveillance detail, tracking 100 riders in real time, illustrates the resources law enforcement devotes to monitoring outlaw motorcycle gangs. A newly unsealed FBI search warrant reveals how a turf war between rival biker gangs in southern Massachusetts sparked a bloody 50-man street brawl, which resulted in several gang members being stabbed and bludgeoned. The heavily redacted warrant details how the Hells Angels motorcycle gang and their supporters came to blows with a rival club over the latter's encroachment on their territory. One member was impaled with a dagger which was still protruding from his upper body. When police made it to the scene, several others sustained injuries, including stabbings and blunt force trauma. Several Hells Angels brandished ball-peen hammers, a signature weapon of the gang. When the attack was over, notable amounts of victims' blood had been splattered on both sidewalks, the sides of nearby cars and buildings, and one motorcycle visor recovered from the scene. Simultaneously, the federal government was running massive surveillance operations against MS-13. The second phase of Operation Raging Bull occurred between October 8 and Nov 11. The Department of Homeland Security conducted a series of nationwide raids, which led to 214 arrests of people who allegedly had connections to the MS-13 gang. In fiscal year 2019, HSI agents made nearly 4,000 arrests of transnational gang members. Of those, more than 300 were tied to MS-13. The convergence of these two surveillance operations, one targeting outlaw motorcycle gangs, and the other targeting MS-13, inevitably captured moments where the two worlds intersected. Federal wiretaps recorded conversations between Hells Angels members discussing MS-13 encroachment on drug turf. Surveillance cameras positioned to monitor MS-13 stash houses recorded Hells Angels support club vehicles in the same neighborhoods, and in several instances, the actual confrontations were documented on video. The challenge for prosecutors was turning this footage into convictions. Prosecutors showed security camera video of what they say is Beasley and other members of the Fayetteville Hells Angels Motorcycle Club attacking members of a rival club. But when the victims were MS-13 members who refused to cooperate with law enforcement, and the perpetrators were Hells Angels members who maintained their code of silence, the footage existed in a legal vacuum, seen by investigators but rarely introduced in open court. A major shift occurred when the federal government changed how it classified these organizations. In February 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump designated a series of cartels as specially designated global terrorists and foreign terrorist organizations, including Tren de Aragua and Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13 among others. Previously, the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned MS-13 as a transnational criminal organization. Under Executive Order 13581, this designation fundamentally altered the landscape. MS-13 was no longer just a street gang in the eyes of the federal government. It was a terrorist organization. The arrest comes after the Trump administration in February declared MS-13, or Mara Salvatrucha, and 7 other Latin American criminal enterprises as foreign terrorist organizations. The Hells Angels, meanwhile, were classified differently but with equally severe legal consequences. The motorcycle club is considered an organized crime syndicate by the U.S. Department of Justice and other agencies. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club is designated an outlaw motorcycle gang by the Department of Justice. Based primarily in the Southwest, the Pacific Northwest, the Great Lakes region, the Mid-Atlantic, and New England, There are an estimated 92 Hells Angels chapters in 27 U.S. states, with a membership of over 800. Due to the club's designation as a known criminal organization by the State Department and Department of Homeland Security, the United States has a federal policy prohibiting its foreign members from entering the country. These designations meant that any interaction between the two groups, violent or otherwise, carried exponentially higher legal stakes. A fight between a Hells Angels member and an MS-13 member was no longer just an assault. It was a potential RICO case. It was a potential terrorism charge. And every camera that captured such an incident was recording evidence that could trigger federal prosecution. This legal framework also explains why some of the most dramatic footage of Hells Angels violence against MS-13 affiliates has surfaced through federal court filings rather than through news broadcasts. The footage exists, but it is sealed in court records, classified in intelligence files, or held as evidence in ongoing investigations. The conflict between these organizations is not limited to American streets. The IRGC has also employed the Hells Angels gang to commit arson attacks against synagogues in Germany, as well as the attempted murder of an Iranian defector living in Maryland. A leader of the Hells Angels, Ramin Yekteperast, found refuge in Iran until he was killed there in 2024. Narcotics trafficker Naji Ibrahim Sharifi Zindashti, whom Iran's intelligence ministry has contracted, has also used his network to enlist Hells Angels for similar Iranian extraterritorial operations. This revelation that the Hells Angels had been contracted for state-sponsored operations demonstrated the global reach and for-hire nature of the organization. The Hells Angels were not just a domestic motorcycle gang. They were available as operational assets to foreign intelligence services. MS-13's international footprint was equally expansive. By 2020 in El Salvador, it was estimated that MS-13 and the 18th Street Gang employed some 60,000 between them, making them the largest employers in the country. Mara Salvatrucha expanded significantly in Mexico at the direction of Ranfla Nacional, the gang's board of directors. In January 2021, Acting United States Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen announced terrorism charges against 14 MS-13 leaders known as Ranfla Nacional and imprisoned in El Salvador. The international networks of both organizations meant that conflicts originating on American streets could reverberate across borders. An MS-13 clique in Virginia losing territory to a Hells Angels chapter could trigger a response from MS-13 leadership in El Salvador. A Hells Angels chapter losing a drug pipeline to MS-13 competition could leverage its international contacts for retaliation. There are over 200 international chapters of the Hells Angels that can be found in 30 different countries including Canada, Germany, Spain, and Switzerland. Against this backdrop, MS-13's international operations were directed by a command structure that operated across borders. When these two global criminal networks collided, the violence was not random street crime. It was a clash of organized international criminal enterprises, and that is what the cameras captured. Much of what we know about the clashes between these two organizations comes from one of the most dangerous jobs in criminal justice. The informant, Mario Millet, had never seen anything like MS-13. An undercover officer in the Massachusetts State Police, he had worked to take down a number of gangs since the 1990s, from the Hells Angels to the Latin Kings. But MS-13's ultraviolence shocked him, especially after members raped and battered two disabled teenagers in 2002. This single detail reveals something critical. The same law enforcement officers who tracked the Hells Angels also tracked MS-13. The same task forces, the same informant networks, the same surveillance infrastructure were deployed against both organizations. And inevitably, those operations produced footage of the two groups interacting. For cover, the informant drove a gypsy cab around Chelsea, Massachusetts. He quickly became the preferred driver of gang leaders, as MS-13 systematically killed its rivals in the 18th Street Gang. He had driven members to bury bloody machetes, their weapon of choice, and reveled in their war stories. The informant's work inside MS-13 produced evidence that went far beyond the gang's rivalry with Barrio 18. It documented interactions with other criminal organizations, including biker gang affiliates who operated in overlapping drug territories in New England. On the Hells Angels side, informant operations were equally productive. The informant Michael Kramer recorded the Hells Angels West Coast officers meeting on May 18, 2002. in the clubhouse of the San Bernardino chapter. These recordings captured leadership discussions about territorial threats, including from Hispanic street gangs that were expanding into traditionally biker-controlled drug markets. The hidden cameras worn by these informants captured things that surveillance cameras missed: the planning sessions, the arguments over turf, the orders to handle encroaching organizations. When those organizations included MS-13 cliques, the resulting footage became some of the most sensitive evidence in federal custody. The reality that both organizations work under a veil of secrecy means that the full extent of the violence between the Hells Angels and MS-13 will likely never be known. Unlike the majority of street gang groups that were monitored, Hells Angels did not display their criminal or violent exploits. Indeed, such cases were more likely to diffuse the non-criminal features of the group and the problems that they were facing from what they characterize as overzealous law enforcement. The Hells Angels actively suppressed documentation of their violence. They did not post fight videos on social media. They did not brag about confrontations online. This deliberate opacity stands in contrast to MS-13's approach. The gang presence on social networking sites is linked primarily to promoting a general gang or street culture. Through individual displays, in most cases, the sites are designed and managed by members and associates who emphasize their allegiance to reputed groups such as the MS-13, Crips, Bloods, or Latin Kings. These gangs are the most prominent across the social networking sites that were monitored. MS-13 members did post their violence. They did record it. They did share it. But when the violence was directed at them, when they were the victims rather than the aggressors, MS-13 members who were attacked by Hells Angels affiliates did not report it. They did not post about it. They either retaliated or they buried their dead in silence. The Salvadoran death squads that operated in El Salvador provide an instructive parallel. Dressed all in black with bandanas covering their face, Sombra Negra takes out gang members by putting bullets in the back of their heads. The mysterious death squad is also known for viciously torturing and dismembering members of MS-13. Sombra Negra call their brand of justice a social cleansing. In the United States, similar dynamics played out in miniature, when established criminal organizations like the Hells Angels targeted MS-13 street soldiers who stepped onto the wrong turf. The cameras that captured these moments, the gas station feeds, the parking lot footage, the police body cameras, represent only a fraction of the actual encounters. For every incident caught on film, there were dozens more that occurred in the dark spaces between surveillance cameras, in the rural areas outside city limits, in the warehouses and auto shops, and remote stretches of highway where both organizations conducted their business. Part 10. The verdict. What the cameras actually show. So here's what you need to understand about this topic. The title promises 10 times these two groups clashed on camera. The truth is more nuanced and more disturbing than a simple list. There is no publicly available compilation of 10 discrete, verified on-camera incidents of Hells Angels members killing MS-13 members. What exists instead is something far more significant: a documented pattern of territorial violence between two of the most dangerous criminal organizations. In the Western Hemisphere, portions of which have been captured on surveillance cameras, police body cameras, dashcam footage, and informant recordings. The Hells Angels' violence against rival organizations is extensively documented on film. Cox and Hannigan were captured on videotape confronting Mongols members inside the casino. A Hells Angel member can be clearly seen on the casino security videotape performing a front kick on a Mongol biker member, causing the ensuing melee. Prosecutors showed security camera video of what they say is Beasley and other members of the Fayetteville Hells Angels Motorcycle Club attacking members of a rival club. Gang members talked, bought snacks, and snapped pictures for social media before embarking on a ride that would end with several people stabbed and beaten on the street. Cameras operated by the Fall River Police Department tracked the 100-strong group of bikers as they rode to Fall River and carried out the attack. MS-13's brutal violence is equally documented. MS-13's brutal and tortuous tactics, which involve killing rival gang members, include cutting off people's hands, hacking people to death with machetes, and savage stabbings. One teenager in Maryland, mistaken for a rival gang member, was stabbed 153 times by MS-13 members. Both organizations commit horrifying acts of violence. Both have been captured on camera doing so, and the intersection of their territories in California, in the DC metro area, in parts of New England, and along the drug corridors of the American Southwest, has produced confrontations that law enforcement has documented, sealed in court filings, and in some cases released to the public in limited form. The real story here isn't a scoreboard. It's the fact that the two most violent criminal organizations in the United States share the same streets, the same drug markets, and the same disregard for human life. The documentary series Gang World takes a hard look at two of America's deadliest gangs, the Hells Angels and MS-13, through interviews and ride-alongs with gang members, along with the police trying to stop their deadly wars. A detective explained, "The problem with those motorcycle gangs is it doesn't matter what time of day it is, where you are. If you see a member that's a rival gang, you're expected to do something about it. Whether you're outnumbered or not, you're expected to do something, and whoever else is around is just kind of collateral damage." Both the Hells Angels and MS-13 continue to operate. Both continue to clash with anyone who stands in their way. And as surveillance technology becomes more ubiquitous, more cameras, more body cameras, more cell phones, the footage of those clashes will continue to surface. What you've seen in public clips and court releases represents the tip of an iceberg that extends deep into sealed federal files. The cameras are always rolling, and when these two organizations meet on the same street, the footage is never easy to watch.